We're talking about, oh, brother, and, who is a brother to me? Can I call you bro? I started using that word about 20 years ago when I was being trained in with Family Life Ministry, and one of the guys who was a trainer just called everybody bro. Everybody was bro, 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 and after you hear it a while, it starts to penetrate, and I like that as a greeting. How you doing, bro? But we're really talking about brotherhood. And right at the top of your notes is this statement that I found to be true, that a man culture, a genuine masculine culture in a church, in a team, in a small group is unsustainable unless it is a friend culture. And the more I hear about Ironworks, the more I hear that, I'm drawn to Ironworks because I find brothers there. Or it's a place where at least I can start to go deeper with some other men. And it kind of happens tribally. You all gather around your familiar tables, and it's fun to watch new guys when they come. They go, well, where do I sit? I say, well, just find a table that looks friendly and go there, and pretty soon people connect with one another. But a man culture is only sustained by a friend culture. It's not sustained by teaching. As much as I work hard at teaching, I know that Ironworks is not sustained by my teaching. It's really sustained. The draw is that I get to be with brothers. And the question that we're going to be asking over this next 8 weeks is, not only do I have brothers who are true brothers in Christ, but am I that brother? And many times we don't see the depth that we really long for. I was in a small group some years ago and saw a rare sign of genuine friendship in these men. One of the men was deeply leveraged in a housing development, millions and millions of dollars. And just as they were beginning to sell homes, they had put in the streets, they'd put up the street lights, they had their model homes, and just as they began to sell homes to finally get some of the money back coming their way, the main investor pulled out. And he had no floor to fall back on. Everything collapsed. And he was staring bankruptcy, lawsuits, the dismissal of his whole staff, the breaking of contracts that he had made. All of that was staring him in the face. And he came to our small group, and there were a couple of guys who had gone through something similar to that. And I watched across the circle. I watched 3 men gather around him with genuine empathy. There were tears and prayers for him. There was a brothering in that situation, a bolstering of him. Now, he had many, many months, even years, lying out ahead of him to untangle the mess that came his way. But these brothers walked with him through that with true empathy and strength and brotherhood. I've seen that in many other situations where something begins to melt, but instead of it being a burnout, it ends up being a melding of brothers together as we need each other in that situation. David Smith wrote a book years ago called The Friendless American Male. And he said this: men have different problems than women, many of which are self-inflicted and therefore avoidable. Women do that too, by the way, but he didn't go into that. One serious problem is the friendless condition of the average American male. Now, I don't want this to be a needle. I don't want this to be a stab in your heart. I don't want this to be an accusation. I want it to be an invitation. That as we talk about brotherhood and friendship over the next weeks, that it's an invitation, because I know there are many men, perhaps sitting here today, who are saying, that's me. I have a lot of acquaintances, but I don't know if I have a true brother. So please don't take this as an accusation of failure. Take it as an invitation to walk into it, to ask yourself some questions. First of all, to become that brother, and then hopefully find that brother. So this is not a series about playing nice or a series about giving each other a group hug that's all fake. It's really about what Jesus really wants for us. And actually, the book of 1 John says, we rejoice because we have fellowship with each other and with Jesus Christ. So the fellowship is supposed to be not only with our eternal source of power and love, but with each other as brothers. So let me give you some friend behavior. And you already know this, but the first thing about a true friend is that a friend is selfless. Perhaps not entirely in every area of his life, but he's demonstrated to you that he's willing to put aside his own schedule or his own agenda and come and be a friend for you. He comes on call. Jesus said in John chapter 15, verse 13, "Greater love has no one than this, that someone lays down his life for his friends." So we're not asking you this morning who's willing to die for a friend, but we are asking, Fran is, will you die for me, Fran? We are asking, are you willing to put aside some portion of your own convenience, your own time, your own distance, your own pride, to come alongside someone else? And we have many caricatures in our culture that don't help us. We have the perpetual adolescence of the beer commercial, where they make it look like everybody's best friends, and we know that's not true. First of all, we know there's not that many beautiful women around in our world. There's the Jason Bourne, who's this self-contained, resourceful guy who always is able alone to get himself out of trouble. We have the caricature of the man in the sitcoms who is mothered and outsmarted by his kids and by his wife. The male who's really not a guy. And then we have this fear that if I really tell another man that I love him, that people will think I'm gay. We have this huge fear as men to express emotion. When you go to Africa, in parts of Africa, you can see men walking down the street holding hands. And they're not gay. It's just a cultural expression of their friendships. And in my own life, I've really struggled. And years ago, I was in a mentoring relationship with a young man, and it turned out to be mostly on the phone. And when he would hang up, just about when we were ready to hang up, I would say, "Who loves you, Marco?" He'd say, "Well, Jesus does." "Well, who else loves you, Marco?" He'd go, "Well, you do." That's right, I love you, Marco. And it actually was training for me to be more comfortable to just come out and say it. I love you. Because love is not just some kind of emotional attachment. It's also a proactive action that I take toward someone else. So I become more comfortable with that word in my own life. And if I don't tell you that I love you, doesn't mean that I'm friendless or that I don't like you in some way. I use it sparingly, but we are so afraid to hug another man genuinely, other than the 3 pats on the back kind of thing, or to really say to somebody, I love you, and that's why I love spending time with you. Now, you might not be ready to take that leap, but we are so often afraid of doing that and expressing it in words and actions. The second aspect of friendship is that it's proactive. Remember when Peter failed and he went and he was hiding under the bleachers? He wasn't on the victory stand. He failed Jesus miserably. And what did Jesus do? He went and found him. And he didn't just come and find him and give him forgiveness and empathy and sympathy. He came and said, "Peter, I need you for something." And he gave him an assignment. So friendship is not about just the powerful helping the weaker one. It does include that, but it's also about those who need each other coming and saying, "I need you for something." It's proactive. They move together. And so Jesus says, strengthen in John chapter 15. No, excuse me, I'm ahead of myself. In Luke chapter 22, it says, strengthen your brothers, Jesus says. And I think of the man Barnabas, who went and found Saul and discipled Saul into becoming Paul the Apostle. So it's proactive. It's not something that just falls out of a tree. You can't be friends in a totally passive way. And the third aspect of friend behavior is it's reciprocal. Jesus said in John 15:15, I call you friends. You're not just servants who came to serve me. Jesus himself had an inner circle. He had the inner circle of Peter and James and John, but he also had the 12, and he called them all friends. He had a different relationship with them than with the crowds and the multitudes. So Jesus didn't walk 6 inches above the pavement. He was a man, and they saw him hungry. They saw him tired. They saw him angry. They saw him loving. And the friendship was built on that whole matrix of seeing his true behavior. So we know these things. We know this is true. But what happens to friends? Remember when you were a 5-year-old boy on the parking lot, in the playground. In the playground, 5-year-old boys will meet for the first time. They'll run up to each other and they'll say, can we be best friends? There's no filter. And they'll come home from school after the first day and say, I met my best friend. We bond so quickly as boys, partly because we're transparent. We're aware of our desire. We're aware of our needs. But what happens to that? Well, first of all, we do grow up. We do create we have some disappointments in those best friends. We develop some calluses about how that happens. But there's some natural things that happen in our life that disconnect us from each other. Just my own story. I grew up in Golden, Colorado. I went from first grade to 11th grade in Golden. I had a whole, I went to the same classes with the same girls, the same guys, same teams, and we knew each other. And then in the middle of my junior year, in March of my junior year, maybe that's why I don't like March, we moved to California. My dad took a new church near San Bernardino, which was near the pit of hell. Smoggy, dark, gross San Bernardino, California. We moved there for the rest of my junior year and my senior year, and I formed really no friendships during that 18 months or so. Then I went to college. I was eager to go to college, and I was at college for 4 years and formed all kinds of new friendships because I ran on the cross-country team and the track team, and it was a small college, and also I met my wife, a true friend. But all those friends from the past were gone. It wasn't the days of internet and Facebook and all that. You had to, make a person-to-person long-distance phone call or actually write a letter. So when I left Colorado, I had no more relationships. When I left San Bernardino, thankfully, I had no more relationships with people there. Went to college, graduated from college as a newly married man. We left college, and all those relationships vanished because it was 1971, just before the earth cooled and they made lead pencils, But you know how it is. You've probably had the same experience. You've had a job and you've moved, and those relationships fade. So there are some natural disconnections in a mobile society like what we have. And then we were in Denver for 19 years after we got married, and then we moved to Minnesota. And we experienced the same thing over again. How do we find friends? And it got harder and harder and harder. And when we first moved here, our daughters were in 6th and 8th grade, and so we made friends with the parents of their friends. It was easy for us as kids, as adults, to make friends that way. And but I became known as Pastor Thompson instead of Roger. And so pastors are killjoys on anything that's fun, and so it was harder for us. And then also I had an opposite schedule. And maybe this is true for you. I'm on Friday mornings. I'm ramping up toward the second half of my week. I have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to take care of all the other stuff. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm ramping up. And so when everybody else is ramping down, I'm ramping up. And my day off is Monday. Who's around on Monday? Nobody. So I'm just telling you, there are natural disconnections that make it difficult for all of us. And you have your own situation. You have travel, you have kids, you have grandchildren, you have health issues. Maybe your wife works a different schedule than you do. It's hard to get together with people. So there are natural disconnections, and we can make them an excuse. And we can also make them a barrier to such an extent that we just neglect the longing in our heart. I wish I could be with a friend. I wish somebody would just drop in. Does anybody ever just drop in on you? We've got a couple of people who do that, and we say, what are you doing here? No, we love that. But we just don't do that anymore, do we? We don't just drop by somebody's house without calling or texting or making an appointment. Do you have anybody in your life who just shows up? It's one measure of true friendship. And the tragedy is that after our kids are raised and we're done with all their activities, we often feel alone. Who's left for me? And that empty nest syndrome. Well, we also need to break the man code. And I've just put some words down here. Unfortunately, they're too much self-describing of me. Unflappable, self-contained, competent, inexhaustible, strong, untouched. And that, I'm speaking from personal experience, is my biggest barrier to forming true friendships. Is that I like to be, I'm trained to be, and I think I project that I'm self-contained. And if there's anything I've learned in the last 10 years, is that I missed opportunities for friendship when people would say, hey, do you need any help with that? I go, no, I've got it. You know the whole Minnesota thing? If you're offered a warm-up on your coffee, you know, you're at somebody's house, you go, no, that's fine, no thanks. Well, they have to offer a second time, you go, no, that's fine. And then if they offer a third time, you say, well, yeah, if it's no trouble for you. You have to refuse it 3 times before it's polite to accept it, you know. Well, that's me. Is that you? I think it's pretty typical of men. Can I help? No, I got this. And it's partly, well, I don't want to inconvenience you, but if I've learned anything, it's people who offer help or who want to be with you would love to take part in the things that you're doing. And this man code is what often precludes friendship. I've got this. And then there's just busyness. We're frantically busy. And so often we just are so busy doing activities, we don't recognize this throbbing inside our heart that says, you know, I'd like to go fishing with somebody that we could just have a conversation. I'd like to take a road trip with a brother. I'd like to do a project with someone. I'd like to have somebody over to our house and just have some time together. So let me just give you a little diagram here. You might have seen it before, but we could be friends. And here's what that entails. You see a little triangle there. And this is really a kind of a gradient of assessing yourself, kind of taking a little inventory of at what level do I tend to relate. And at the beginning of this is just cliche, that's what the first blank is cliche conversation. It's really non-sharing. It's elevator talk. You know, you're in an elevator and you go, nice day. Everybody goes, sure, you know. You're not sharing anything of yourself. You know, there's nothing exposed in that situation. Then there are the facts. You stay centered on the facts. You talk about the facts. You just, you know, it's about the weather. It's about the team. It's about the Final Four. We talk about those kinds of things. And there's nothing wrong with that. Then when we get a little bit safer, we start exposing a little bit more of ourselves. We're a little bit broader. We start giving opinions. And that might be political opinions. It might be opinions about raising kids. It might be opinions about whatever's going on in the world. But it's sharing what you think about people. And then if you'll do this in your diagram, draw a water line across there. Because here's where true friendship really begins. Because when true friendship goes deeper, we begin to share emotions, how we feel. It may not be how you start your conversation, but one of the things we want to do in Ironworks in our discussions is to help you step a toe across that line from just opinion to here's how it feels to me. Here's what I've experienced. Here's what I've lost. Here's what I long for. Here's what I desire in my life. Those are called feelings. And when men begin to open up and say, this is how I really feel about something, or this is what I have felt in my past, or here's an experience that meant a lot to me, or here's something that has caused me to be hesitant in my present. It happened in the past. We begin to share feelings. What happens is friendship deepens. And most often this happens in a time of difficulty or some kind of crisis. When we finally say, hey, I need you to listen to me. Can I share this with you because I don't know what to do? And you might not even use the word emotion or the word feeling, but you begin to share a little bit of your heart. And there's a lot more of you that becomes visible to the person. Because a lot of us feel like we're a can of Coca-Cola that's been shaken up, and there's no exhaust to that. There's no way to let the pressure off. Then finally, the deepest part of this, where the most of you is displayed, is what we call transparency. So if emotion is sharing what you feel, transparency is the sharing of who you are. And that can come in very positive ways. It can come when you genuinely give yourself away in an act of sacrificial love to a brother. It can also come when someone comes into your life and you say, this is where I am, this is who I am, this is what I need. Just listen to me. Listen to my latest failure. One of the reasons that these freedom groups go so deep is that men start, don't they, John? They start here, or very quickly get here. This is who I am. This is what I don't like about myself. This is my struggle. Now, we hesitate to dive into that. We've got to have a safe place to do this. We can't just do this in the parking lot. We've got to have a safe place. But when men start here, when they finally get here, and somebody can see the worst side of me and still accept me, or when they can see my most impossible dream. This is what I want to build. This is where I want to go. This is my vision for my life. And somebody won't laugh at you for that. When I can share really this is who I am, then that's really the broadest form of friendship. That's where the most is needed and to be given. So when I think about this, I think about many times I think about it in terms of emotional clothing. And the deeper we go in friendship, the less guarded we are, the less emotional clothing we're wearing. We're no longer clad in a snowmobile suit with a helmet. We're wearing a Speedo. I know. I just wanted to give you a visual image. So that next week... Next week, we want to be transparent with one another. But why do I fear going there? Why do I fear going to transparency? It's because people will see who I really am. And you can't be transparent with very many people in your life. Very, very few, but you need that one. You need those two. You need that circle of brothers where you can say, you know who I am, you've seen my dark side, we're in this together, and God's grace has brought us together. We are brothers. I mean, what do you think John, the Apostle John, thought of the Apostle Peter after Peter failed so miserably? Well, we don't know for sure. It's a silence in Scripture, but I have to imagine those two guys were bonded together. And not one that's powerful and one that's weak, but as true brothers saying, didn't Jesus love us both so well? That's what I long for, and that's what you long for. So I want to ask you today to just do some personal rummaging. Not as a threat, not as an accusation, not as a failure, but some personal rummaging to invite that feeling. Do I have that brother in my life? And it may not happen here. I think it can happen. It can begin here. It may be happening somewhere else, but do I have that person in my life that I can really go to, where I'm not self-sufficient, I'm not self-contained, I need you, and I appreciate your friendship. And I bring something as well. So do some personal rummaging about your own man habits, about your own man code. And let's ask ourselves, am I spending my life paddling around in the shallow? Or am I willing to go deeper? And that has to be a safe place. It has to be with people who will keep confidences. But nevertheless, if I don't ever do that, I'll never really have a true brother. And if you look back and you say, I used to have a friend, you'll say, some of this happened. We didn't have the chart. It just happened because we were together. So today we want to talk about some questions that I have for you, and I hope that you will maybe put your toe across the line as you talk about some of these things. So around your tables this morning, I've got 3 questions here, and if you get to all 3, that'd be great, but if not, I hope you'll bond together as brothers to some extent as we talk about these things. So let's talk amongst ourselves, and we'll come back in a few minutes.